Good evening, and thank you for being here. I hope you're doing well today and that this moment finds you steady. My name is Think Revenge. If these stories speak to you, you're welcome to subscribe and stay a while. Which city are you watching from? You can share it in the comments. Now let me tell you what happened. I had worked at that company for just over 7 years. Long enough to know its rhythms, its unspoken rules, and the way decisions were really made. On paper, it was a respectable mid-sized firm with offices in 3 countries. In practice, it was a family operation in all but name, run by 2 brothers who had inherited it from their father. I was not family. None of us were, no matter how long we stayed. The first public humiliation came during a quarterly meeting. We were all seated around the long glass table, coffee cups lined up, laptops open. I had prepared the projections for a new client rollout, something I'd been quietly managing for months. When my turn came, I spoke calmly, laid out the numbers, and explained the risks. One of the brothers leaned back in his chair, smiled thinly, and said, "You worry too much, that's your problem." A few people laughed. Not because it was funny, but because laughter was safer than silence. I nodded, closed my laptop, and sat back. I told myself it was nothing. I had been telling myself that for years. The pattern had started earlier than that. Projects reassigned at the last minute. Credit drifting upward to management while blame drifted down. Raises delayed with vague promises. Once, my performance review included the phrase "excellent contributor," but sometimes forgets her place. I remember staring at that sentence, wondering how competence could be framed as overstepping. Still I stayed. I had a mortgage, a routine, a reputation for being reliable, and if I'm honest, a stubborn hope that professionalism would eventually be rewarded. The day it finally broke was not dramatic. No shouting, no slammed doors. Just a small, careless sentence spoken in front of the wrong people. We were in an open plan area, reviewing a timeline that had already slipped because management had approved changes without adjusting resources. I pointed out, gently, that we'd need either more staff or more time. One of the brothers looked at me, irritated, and said, loud enough for half the floor to hear, "If you don't like it here, you can always leave." There was a pause, heads lowered. Screens suddenly fascinating. I looked at him. He wasn't angry, he was bored. To him, it was a throwaway line, a reminder of power. I said nothing. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I simply nodded and went back to my desk. That evening, I went home and opened a folder I had been quietly maintaining for over a year. Emails, meeting notes, version histories, approved timelines that contradicted the public narrative. I hadn't collected them out of revenge. I had collected them out of self-preservation. Something in me had known, long before I admitted it, that memory alone would not protect me. I read through everything slowly, calmly. Then I made a decision. I drafted a resignation letter. Short, polite, professional, no accusations, no explanations. I thanked them for the opportunities and gave the required notice, effective immediately as per my contract clause regarding hostile work environments. I attached nothing. I sent it to HR and both brothers at 9:02 a.m. the next morning. Then I turned off my work phone. By the afternoon, the messages started. First confusion, then urgency, then irritation. By day 2, it was panic. What they had forgotten, or perhaps never fully understood, was how much of the operation I quietly held together. I wasn't senior management, but I was the bridge between departments. I knew which clients needed reassurance, which vendors required firm handling, which internal shortcuts were holding fragile systems upright. Within a week, deadlines were being missed. A major client asked for clarification on a discrepancy I had flagged months earlier. Without my documentation, no one could answer them clearly. HR called, then legal. Then one of the brothers, speaking more carefully now, asked if I would consider a transition conversation. I agreed on one condition, that any discussion would include an external mediator and be conducted in writing. The mediator was efficient and neutral. She reviewed the timeline, asked for documents, and listened without expression. I provided what she requested, nothing more. I did not editorialize. I let emails speak. Let version histories show who approved what, and when. Let meeting notes demonstrate how concerns had been raised and dismissed. The brothers' tone changed as the record grew thicker. It turned out my departure had triggered an internal review. Not because they cared about me, but because a client had escalated concerns to the board. The review uncovered a pattern. Not just with me, but with others who had quietly left over the years. Similar feedback, similar dismissals, similar phrases used to shut conversations down. The mediator asked me one final question, what outcome I wanted. I thought about it carefully. I did not ask for my job back. I did not ask for apologies. I asked for a clean severance, a neutral reference, and written confirmation that my professional conduct had never been in question. They agreed. A month later, I heard through former colleagues that the brothers were no longer attending open meetings. HR had been restructured. Policies had been updated, suddenly, with language about respect and reporting channels. I didn't feel triumphant. Mostly I felt light. Leaving without a word had not been an act of weakness. It had been clarity. I had stopped trying to be heard by people who benefited from not listening. Now, when I think back to that moment in the open plan office, the sentence that followed me for years has lost its weight. If you don't like it here, you can always leave. I did, and in the quiet that followed, the truth spoke louder than I ever could.